Okay, so I believe we have a good number of participants around, so it's a good time to start. And welcome once again to everyone, and welcome to our amazing speakers for joining us today, and to the FARC City team for putting this roundtable together. So we are having the first PENCE Climate Roundtable organized as part of the PENCE project, facilitated by the FARC City Foundation team. So today our session would follow this agenda. We'll take 5 minutes to introduce the session, introduce the FARC City Global Initiative and the PENCE project, and also the speakers that we have around today. And then in the next round, we would have each of our speakers take time to give a presentation on different topics around climate change. And then we will open the floor to a discussion and where participants can share their submissions or questions or anything of that sort. And for now, I would ask that if you have any questions or need to make any submissions, kindly add them to the chat, and once we get to the Q&A session, you would be able to directly ask the speakers, or I would be able to read out the questions. And then we would wrap up and meet another time in another PENCE roundtable. So I mentioned earlier that the roundtable discussion is being organized as part of the PENCE project. And the PENCE project is in full the Power Europe narrative for civic ecology. I'll take that again. The PENCE project stands for Power Europe narrative for civic ecology. And this initiative is run by the FARC City Foundation together with other consortium partners like the Ars Longa, Fabla Barcelona, and the Critics for Climate Change. And so we are very happy here to be having this conversation around the urgent topic like climate change, and to find collaborative pathways to ensure that we can all take action against this global issue that we all face. And so more details on the project is available on the PENCE website for you to interact and find ways you can engage the project. So back to our session for today. If you are new here, the FARC City Global Initiative is a global community of 54 network cities, and then a group of collective members who are stewards who foster the FARC City agenda and promote it in their own organizations. And then we have the FARC City Foundation, which is the facilitating body that organizes the global initiative. And so the PENCE project is part of one of the approaches that the FARC City Foundation uses to engage its community on global challenges, global topics such as climate change, local production, distributed innovation, and many more. And driving into what our conversation today is about, which is the PENCE project. It's funded by the European Commission, and it stands for Power Europe Narrative for Civic Ecology. And it's focusing on addressing climate change and environmental issues through citizen engagement and the cultural and creative sectors and industries, and how these different sectors can come together to push for the agenda of climate action. And so for today's session, we are aiming to foster collaboration among participants, and then we are hoping to find out pathways that tackle climate change and then share innovative practices by the projects that our speakers will share, case studies, and more. And we're expecting that at the end of this session, we would have strengthened engagement amongst ourselves. We would have identified pathways to take climate action, and we would have a collective of successful climate initiatives that are taking root in our local communities. So without taking more time, I would zoom right in to invite our first speaker, Nicola, a project manager from the Forum Virium Helsinki, and we are happy to have him speak about the Greening Cities project and the amazing nature-based solutions that they are currently implementing to support Malmö district. So, Nico, I'm happy to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. And hello to everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to be here and be part of this community. I think this is a very, very powerful initiative, and I'm really happy to give a few insights into Okay, good. I think the echo is over now, so perfect. Let me just share my screen. I think, Frida, you have to stop sharing your screen that I can share mine. Let's see if it works now. There we go. So just let me know if it works and if you can see my presentation. Good. Perfect. All right. So yes, I'm talking about the Greening Cities project today. We have been using the subtitle A Sustainable City for All Species. So I think this pretty much sums up one of our high-level objectives that we have with this project here. Just a little bit about the table of contents here. So I will quickly go through the project intro and the local context. Then I was asked to talk about the local biodiversity and the urban development. Then we can have a little look at the citizen activation and participation. And then we will finish with a few insights. I think it's, in my case, rather a little collection of questions here that we have for the digital tools as well. But really quickly, I come to you from Forum Virium Helsinki, which is a non-profit innovation company owned by the city of Helsinki. It has been established in 2005, and we focus very much on smart city solutions as such. So we have three teams or three programs. There is the smart city, smart mobility, and the data team. We run solely on EU funding, and our annual project for funding is from 4 to 6 million euros. We are about 60 colleagues at the moment, and every one of us is working in international EU projects. So, yes, a little bit about the project objective. So the high-level objective as such is stated here. So we are really looking for demonstrating a holistic, data-driven and co-creative approaches in nature-based solutions towards climate adaptation and mitigation. So let's break down what that actually means. In the project, we have in total 31 partners, and the lead of the consortium is at the Institute of Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. We have in total 11 cities in this project. 5 of those are the leader cities. Helsinki is a part of the leader cities, and then we have the 6 follower cities here. Throughout the project, you can see it will run for 4 years. The first year is almost over now. We will establish quite a tight dialogue between the leader and the follower cities. The leader cities are obviously forerunners. We will try to implement some of our interventions and then have a close dialogue with the follower cities and see what they can learn, how can they adapt our learnings to their context. And obviously we will as well co-monitor and document together what we have been doing throughout the years. 3 main challenges in the project. The first challenge is improving societal readiness level and awareness of the vulnerable groups living in deprived areas. I will tell you shortly more about our local context here. The second challenge is to go beyond the greening and renaturation classical understanding. So obviously we are looking on the non-human dimension here, and we want to test out new concepts and new nature-based solutions to work against the climate change. Then the third challenge is leveraging cutting-edge technologies to enhance co-creation processes and maximize the urban regeneration impact. So the societal aspect, the nature aspect, and broadly the digital and the tool aspect, all three here in our objectives. About our local context, about the area, as I said, we focus on Helsinki, the capital of Finland. We are in an area called Malmi, in a neighborhood called Malmi. And there we have the Longinoja Park, which is our intervention area here. Malmi has approximately 29,000 inhabitants, which is for Helsinki quite a big district here. And Malmi district is recognized as an area with a high risk of segregation, some deteriorating public spaces and socio-economic challenges. Helsinki has at the moment 5 different suburban regeneration areas where where Malmi is one of those, meaning that the city can address and focus strategic developments directly to these areas and mainly working against segregation here. An interesting fact here as well is that approximately 40% of Malmi's population speak a different language as their first language than Finnish, Swedish, or Sami. So lots of interesting stories here in Malmi, lots of different angles which we have to take into consideration while working within green area in this type of setting. About the local biodiversity and the suburban development, a few slides here. How does it look in our area? Here's a few pictures from this summer. You can see here at the bottom on the right side an image of the Longinoja Creek that's running through the area here, which is quite a focal area of our development here. We will focus mostly on interventions with this creek throughout this project. About the local species, there's quite some typical species as birds, then species inhabiting the meadows, forests and shrubs. But then we have as well a few endangered and protected species here. So we have the sea trout, which is actually right at the moment making its way from the Baltic Sea through different rivers into the small creek here, and is actually home for them for a while. They will lay their eggs there, and then there will be a new generation of trouts be born there soon. Then talking about the vegetation, we have obviously meadows and grasslands. You can see in the picture here in the middle, it's quite a scenic landscape and doesn't feel very urban. It's a little bit of rural atmosphere that you have there. So it's quite an interesting setting. But then we have the local challenges. So next to our planning area, there has been the Malmi Airport, which was Helsinki's first international airport back in the days. It has been closed for some time now, and the city is starting to develop it as a residential area. In this neighborhood, there will be, within the next 30 to 40 years, 25,000 new inhabitants living there. And this obviously puts a little bit of pressure on our planning area, on the Longinoja area, which is directly adjacent to the Malmi Airport area. So now we are looking to create a park or a green space that obviously is a safe habitat for the local species. We want to try out different nature-based solutions for the climate change adaptations. Then we want to promote that space as a place for activities all year round. So obviously in the Finnish Northern Europe climate, we have quite short summertime, and then the rest of the year is defined by either ice or snow or mud or rain. So not that fruitful conditions, let's say, for spending your time outside, but we still want to see how we can facilitate an outdoor space that is active throughout the year. Then we want to see create this sense of belonging and interventions that bring people together. And then in the end as well, once the Malmi Malmö Airport area has been finally developed, we need to make sure that our area hosts routes and different connections to Malmö Center then. Our interventions, mostly nature-based solutions. We want to pilot the soil as carbon sink and catchment water cleaning. We want to use biochar for that and see how that works in this area. We are going to pilot the use of recycled concrete, mostly for creating a new path and paving for that. We want to enhance the diversity of the meadow vegetation. There is a few fields in this area that have been meadows before. We want to renature them because nowadays they are used for agricultural reasons, but we want to renaturate them. We are looking to recycle meadows from somewhere else and to see in how far we can plant the already existing meadows, take them from some area and put them here in our planning area. So then we as well make up for the meadows that we will lose in the Malmö-Kenta, the Malmö Airport development. And as I said, we obviously want to as well conserve the trout and the species that we have already there. And a big role in that plays obviously participating the users of the public spaces. So we have this toolbox that we can use throughout the whole project. So the toolbox contains different tools and methods from the consortium partners. There is quite a detailed tool set, different methods that we want to try out in our projects, in the local projects. But let's spend a little bit time on the citizen activation and participation. We pay close attention to our approach that features 3 dynamic stages. So we have the co-analysis, the co-design, and the co-monitoring. We have quite detailed inclusion guidelines for that each of the partners follows, and as well that enables us to try out new and more inclusive planning processes and engagement processes with the local inhabitants. Especially we want to focus on the vulnerable groups in this area, and our hypothesis for the Helsinki project is that actually a big share of the local community remains unreached by the traditional engagement and participation tools, methods, and processes. Possible reasons for that can be language barriers, cultural, religious backgrounds, or just simply the feeling of not being heard, having had bad experiences with engagement processes before. So we want to tackle these issues and be as inclusive as possible. And in the end, we want to find key aspects that help to strengthen the identity of Malmö. We will have regular events in a placemaking sort of manner taking place in the area, bringing the area on the mental map of the people. We want to engage, obviously, the locals in the co-creation of the park and gain an understanding of the local population's different perceptions and experiences with nature. As I said, there's a very diverse population living in Malmö, and we oftentimes maybe make the mistake that we plan from our own local perspective in terms of nature. But I think we have to find out first how the local population, how the different cultures present, what their experiences and connotations with nature are, because we have to really think about a diverse kind of connection to the nature that everybody can actually build as well their own relationship to nature. That's a microphone open, I think, somewhere. Perfect. Okay, here a quick overview about how we want to reach out. I'm not going to go into detail because I've spent already quite a lot of time here. But you can see that we are trying to use our local associations and community managers. We are really lucky that in Malmö we have a neighborhood liaison who runs this Malmö network, where there is all of the local associations and communities are in this network, so it's quite easy to reach out to them. We want to have a broader outreach events first and actually establish how the members of the vulnerable groups, what are actually what's their readiness to be part of a co-creation process, what would be a topic that's interesting enough for them to get involved, and then we want to find out in how far or what the tool actually is, how should we start working together with them to actually get their commitment to what we are doing. And then we want to establish a small group out of all these groups that we have been talking before, to really actively engage in the co-creation process of the different interventions in our park area. And finally, digital tools and the community engagement. So here's, as I said, as I promised before, rather a list of questions. Let's call them research questions at this point. We don't have answers to those yet, but we really want to see and how far we can utilize already existing big data, for example, for the landscape and park planning purposes. The city of Helsinki has a lot of data already collected through different feedback forms, different other engagement projects. How can we exploit that data more efficiently? And I think what's really crucial and interesting here for us is how can the cultural, social, and natural phenomena be translated into a map-based format that actually can then be used efficiently in landscape planning processes before. So most of the time, these type of soft factors are documented in some workshops and some documents and whatever PDF format, but do they really end up in a map or in a GIS file, which then in the end some landscape designer or planner might use in the future is really a question we want to tackle as well. Yeah, and obviously, how can we establish a working co-creation process with the vulnerable or hard to reach groups that enables them to work with us throughout the project? Perfect. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. And in the meantime, you can have a look at our website here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miko. That's a really insightful presentation on the Greening Cities project and all the interventions that you foresee happening soon. And for our next speaker, we have Jessica Newfield, who is a senior program consultant for the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, who would give us some very good insights on participatory governance around the topic of climate change. So Jessica, I would like to hand over to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Frida. Fantastic. So thank you for the invitation to speak with you today. We're going to explore how citizens and communities can take action to adapt to and build resilience against the impacts of climate change through one of my favorite topics, participatory governance. So first, just a little introduction. I'm Jess, and yes, I'm obsessed with participatory governance. I have 10 plus years of experience at the intersection of community building and climate adaptation policymaking. And so I've seen firsthand the powerful impact of programs that integrate local knowledge and empower communities to manage climate risks on their own terms. And I've seen this through working with organizations like WWF Panda Labs, MIT D-Lab, UNDP, and also where I currently work at Sustainable Ocean Alliance, where we empower 18 to 35-year-olds in advancing their ocean policy careers. So I want to start off with an AI-generated visual representation of what is the current Valencia floods and also alongside the greatly anticipated US elections. So the split screen might at first glance look odd or unrelated, but I wanted to highlight the interconnection of climate challenges with our global and national political landscapes. My thesis, or rather my argument I would like to make to you today, is that participatory governance could prevent, or at the very least mitigate to some degree, climate disasters such as the one that we're seeing right now in Valencia, and also the decline of representative democracy like we're seeing in the US. Excuse me, my screen is frozen. Okay, there you go. So we know that there are compounding effects to climate change that are only going to be felt worse and worse across the globe. I dare say that probably most of us at some point will become a climate refugee in our lifetime, or at the very least, we might know someone in our communities who have been displaced because of the climate crisis. And coastal communities are the front lines of the climate crisis. As they face distinct risks from rising sea levels and coastal erosion, they play a crucial role in climate adaptation efforts. And these communities have a direct connection to natural resources, making them pivotal in developing and implementing effective strategies to mitigate the impacts of climate change. So participatory governance could be an answer to this. Participatory governance is an approach where citizens and stakeholders are actively involved in decision-making processes, influencing policies and managing resources. And unlike traditional governance, which is often top-down, participatory governance creates spaces for community voices to shape outcomes that affect them. So this model values inclusivity, accountability, and shared responsibility, aiming to bridge the gap between governments and communities for more resilient and equitable solutions. And so these are the building blocks that I've mapped to basically bring this framework to life. So the first one is citizen activation. And citizen activation refers to engaging individuals to take action on issues that affect their community. So this may involve rallying citizens around specific projects or policies that align with community needs and values. So really the purpose of this is to have citizens participate actively in governance, providing input and holding authorities accountable. So making sure that local voices influence local decisions. And some techniques for activation include participatory budgeting, public consultation, citizen assemblies, those types of things, which we will get into later when I go through some case studies. Second is community building. So community building is a foundational work of creating social ties, something that I think the Fab City Lab community does really well. And it really entails fostering trust, establishing networks within communities. And when we have participatory governance, strong community ties create an environment where citizens feel invested and responsible for communal outcomes. So here, what's really important is the shared identity that comes from a community, which is a bit different from a network. A network is often a flow of transactions, and a community is often a shared identity and where you either are bonded by similar practices or by similar values or that sort of thing, which I think a lot of us here embody. So third building block is awareness and education. So awareness and education are essential for informed participation. So you need to provide community members with the knowledge and understanding necessary to make meaningful contributions. And that way they can really engage in a constructive dialogue and make decisions based on evidence and data rather than speculation or emotions. And so that way having this really enhances the effectiveness of participatory governance. And so this could be an example of this is ensuring that the public has access to workshops, to information, having public forums, having educational materials about climate change, water management, and that sort of thing, and using a vocabulary that is not polarizing, but really is neutral, politically neutral. And then lastly, we have capacity building. So this is really about equipping directly communities with the skills, resources, and the structures needed to actively participate in governance. So ideally, participatory governance becomes also self-governance. And so here you would have training programs on technical skills, understanding policy frameworks, using digital tools, leadership development, financial literacy, all types of things that will really equip citizens to become the solutionists of the issues that they face day to day. And so ideally, these building blocks are all interconnected. You see that community building and citizen activation are mutually reinforcing, because if people feel a sense of belonging, then they are more likely to engage in collective action. And education underpins effective citizen activation by ensuring that participants understand the issues at hand And then also capacity building provides the tools needed to sustain that engagement then. So this framework, though, this is kind of how my brain works. In the theory first, I think it's helpful to think of sort of your general framework for what you would like participatory governance to look like. And hopefully this can be something that you can implement. Okay, so now some case studies to ground ourselves. So I want to share these success stories that really illustrate how citizen action and participatory governance have contributed to preventing or mitigating climate disasters. And you can see it also being a way to address issues like faced in the US with representative democracy or the rise of populism across the world. So here we have the Netherlands water boards. And so the Netherlands are known for their vulnerability to flooding and has a long history of water management. But the water boards are a unique form of local governance dating back to the Middle Ages with citizen involvement at their core. And so the boards are responsible for maintaining dikes, managing water levels, and protecting communities from floods. And so the citizens directly elect representatives to these water boards, ensuring that local voices are able to influence flood prevention strategies. And so a direct outcome of these Dutch water boards is that they've been able to reduce their flood risk. And so, really demonstrating that participatory governance can work to proactively manage climate issues. So maybe this is something that the city of Valencia could implement down the road or other flood-prone regions. Next, we have Porto Alegre's participatory budgeting. So in the 1980s, Porto Alegre introduced participatory budgeting, which is a model allowing residents to decide on municipal budget allocations. And I love this because I think obviously money is power. So if residents and citizens can make financial decisions, then they're taking back that power. And it's also inherently part of the democratic process, which brought marginalized communities into urban planning discussions, allowing them to prioritize infrastructure investments, including climate resilience projects. So over time, this participatory approach can lead to improved drainage, waste management, and sanitation infrastructure, which of course are crucial for mitigating flood risk. And actually, this model, Porto Alegre's model, has been adopted by other cities worldwide as a tool for equitable urban planning development. And participatory budgeting is something that could be further implemented in a lot of different use cases. Next, we've got Ireland's Citizens Assembly. So I'm a big fan of Citizens Assembly. If you are not familiar with this method of citizen engagement, the one that happened in Ireland was established in 2016. And they engaged randomly selected citizens in deliberations on controversial issues like abortion and climate action. And so there were facilitated discussions, and experts provided the data and context while the participants considered diverse perspectives. And they were able to basically make informed recommendations, which then directly led to referendums with a general high public acceptance rate, which means that this could be a mechanism to counter polarization, to ensure that even when you have a very divisive topics, that they actually can be addressed with people on the whole spectrum of the whole political spectrum. And so this is also something that increases public trust and led to the successful legalization of abortion and some pretty robust climate policy recommendations. So next we've got flood management in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is, as most of us probably know, really susceptible to flooding. And they've established community-based flood management systems where the local communities participate in early warning, response planning, and post-disaster recovery efforts. So you can see this person is using a boat with a megaphone to basically give information about how they can prepare for floods. And these programs are often facilitated by local community-based organizations and also in partnership with government agencies. So this can have, it's a model that could be replicated and really goes along with the concept of citizen science. Okay, and last but not least, we've got Paris Climate Assembly. So this one's dear to my heart because I'm French American and based in Paris. And the Paris Climate Assembly was convened back in 2019 and basically brought 150 citizens randomly selected to reflect the city's demographic. The participants were paid and they deliberated on urban climate policy and really focused on different aspects of what climate legislation would need to entail to reduce emissions, to implement renewable energy, and just generally fund green infrastructure. And so it was one of the most rigorous climate legislation bills that was then brought to the president, even though it started off in a very local context of Paris and how Paris could respond to the climate crisis. So this again reinforces civic trust, and it's like having a lot more staffers, a lot more political appointees to your government if we actually really engage citizens and civilians to do this type of work. Okay, so I do want, of course, there's a lot of promise, and there's also, I think it's important to think about if you're going to implement a participatory governance framework in your local context, what are some potential barriers that you might encounter? So the obvious one is, of course, lack of funding. Not every citizen assembly is funded, and citizen-led initiatives are often, they often struggle to secure adequate funding to sustain their activities. So that is one to keep in mind. Another is organizational capacity. Limited organizational skills, leadership, and volunteer resources can hinder citizen groups from effectively planning and executing on their initiatives. Community apathy, overcoming indifference or skepticism within a local community can be a significant challenge. I think especially in this current era of having us bombarded with a lot of news where we've become, almost too overwhelmed and complacent and not knowing how to directly act on very global issues. That's, I think, probably contributing to the sense of apathy. So thinking through what's in your sphere of influence versus what is in your sphere of control could be one way to counter that. But another obstacle is bureaucratic. So, of course, a lot of our different governments have complex administrative procedures and regulations, which can be very intimidating at first to citizen groups. So that can slow down their progress and make it harder to achieve their goals. We've got also resistance to change. So, of course, people have certain views, and we tend to have very entrenched interests and a reluctance to embrace new ideas. So that could be another one. And then the lack of collaboration, finally, as people are more isolated in our, very hyper-individualized global economy, it might discourage citizens from collaborating and also with local authorities. So that can really be a significant challenge that hinders the potential for synergies and collaboration. Okay, so I had to come with the solutions to that, so don't give up hope. I think there are some effective strategies to overcoming these challenges, and these are my suggestions for how to ensure that you have effective citizen activation participation. So first, the co-design and participatory planning. You want to make sure that you're engaging citizens directly in designing solutions. So I think this was mentioned by Miko too. You want to have co-analysis, co-design. So the whole process needs to involve citizens from the beginning. These dialogues and assemblies do create spaces for structured, inclusive decisions. And then we have the digital platforms for real-time feedback to implement mobile apps or platforms where citizens can provide feedback, report issues in real time, and track local changes to the environment. We have public awareness campaigns. So going back to the pillars of what you need to have participatory governance, ensuring that you're raising awareness through multimedia campaigns, workshops, community events to educate citizens around key climate issues. And then incentivizing volunteering and citizen science. So if we encourage citizens to participate by offering financial incentives, other types of incentives, that will help them and incentivize them to collect the data. And finally, community grants and mini funding programs. So we've seen this actually at my organization. It works really well, giving small micro grants to solutionists, entrepreneurs, marine scientists in their own communities, just to be able to directly fund a solution right in that moment is much more effective than a large top-down approach to addressing a climate issue. Okay, so that's been a lot of talking. But finally, I want to leave you with another AI-generated split screen. But this one, this time it's one where you can see an alternative reality or a potential future with thriving coastal communities, cleaner energy practices, regenerative agriculture, cooperative ownership and management of our resources, which is juxtaposed next to what looks like citizen assemblies, maybe 2.0 in the future, practicing deliberative democracy. So I really do believe that participatory governance has immense promise for fostering sustainable and resilient coastal communities and beyond, in cities all over the world and rural areas as well. So by collaborating with local residents and stakeholders, we can develop inclusive approaches that empower communities to adapt to environmental challenges and build a more sustainable future. So I'll leave you with my favorite Eleanor Roosevelt quote, which feels fitting here. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And so I hope you will join me all in this radical dream I call participatory governance. Thank you. And I'll put in the chat my email and info on how to reach me and other things that I'm working on. But yeah, excited to talk to you more during our Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Really inspiring and also insightful how you break down the different building blocks of participatory governance. And I see how it links to the greening cities interventions that you also have ongoing. So our final speaker, but definitely not the least, is Daniel Kaufman, who is the Senior Advisor for CITRA and also partner at NUSA Senitara. So Daniel, I will kindly hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Freda, and thank you for the invitation to the foundation, and great to hear these cases and discussion from Jessica and Mikko. So yeah, my name's Daniel, and I'm maybe a couple of words of my background. I'm currently working on EU-funded circular economy resource center that aims to bring relevant circular economy models to the global south over the next 5 years. Then we're taking the first steps on building a zero waste hub in Western Sumatra in Indonesia and artist residence collective. This is a very exciting project as well. And then lastly, this year I've been very intrigued by the Amazonian Munduruku and Guarani tribes and trying to learn about regenerative practices from indigenous communities. So a bit of this and that, but today I want to talk about circular economy and systemic change a bit, and rather in a holistic level, hopefully picking our brain a bit and then bringing some fresh perspectives, diving into what is circular economy and what's the relevance to climate change, and then, yeah, like I said, some food for thought, hopefully, for today's discussion and the PENCE community. All right, is my screen share working? Yes, it is. Okay. So maybe as a context, we live in this world of growth. So in this illustration you see on the left-hand side, all these charts are describing the progress of the human species and our societies and the economy. Things like population, GDP growth, even the number of McDonald's restaurants or international tourism, steeply going northeast up to the right corner. And then, however, on the right-hand side, you see the price of this progress. So these are devastating stats of a very negative growth. CO2 pollution have skyrocketed. The ocean ecosystems have been largely destroyed, and we have wiped out around 60% of the animal populations by now. So this really sad and contradicting picture is one way to describe the systemic change that we need. So we need to be able to decouple this economic progress that we call it from the overuse of resources and destruction of natural habitats. And yeah, so this is the reality we face today, and it's not only a sustainability crisis, but it's also a humanitarian and economic issue. And sometimes I like to think of also, like, in practice, think about cities, like how they operate around the world. So they really, in big picture, cities are like these big vacuums that just suck resources, like minerals, all kinds of resources around them, and then things are being consumed, and then what comes out is trash. And this trash just fills the landfills and streets and gutters and rivers and forests and alleys and dumps, and ends up in the oceans and the rivers. And this scenario repeats itself every day. And you know, we can look at really good systems, but it's still 90% of the realities. It looks like this in the world. So this is something that needs to be changed. However, there's a lot of opportunities and good news of like having this kind of inefficiency and opportunities to do things better. For example, if we talk about cars, they did an interesting study in Helsinki that actually, if you take the whole fleet, all the cars in Helsinki, 4% of that total car fleet would be enough to do all the driving needed. If the assets were shared and there was a sort of an AI operator coordinating all the driving. And of course, from a city or community perspective, we can look at housing, construction, and transportation, waste management, and food systems are big topics where there's a lot of also low-hanging fruits to cut down our impact. Personally, I somehow kind of use a quick and dirty definition of the circular economy as it's just simply to make the most out of existing things, rather than source all these new things from this planet. Or maybe more than looking at studies and research and cases that's been done, circularity has been shown to have the potential to reverse global biodiversity loss. And this is relates to that 90% of land use related biodiversity loss is caused by resource extraction and processing. And people also tend to think a lot of mines and forestry here, but it's actually the big elephant in the room is also the food system, obviously, in this case. Circular economy has a big potential in different levels to cut global emissions. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and then also simply just reduce the consumption of raw materials and resources. Then the last point, I think, I'm not going to go into it. It's a little bit controversial to look into this one. Personally, I'm not sure if always the growth word is the right in this context, but certainly a new type of economy is something that we need. And it's also a bit of a hype. So we have, for example, more than 75 national circular economy roadmaps around the world. Cities are following suit, and regions. We have, based on Accenture surveys, 70% of companies globally are looking into circular economy business models and strategies that save resources but still can add value. So it's a bit of a trend happening. But yeah, maybe jumping back to the kind of maybe the EU context and kind of the emission reduction potential that some studies highlight. Maybe I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but basically, you know, we have most of what we need already in the surface of the planet circulating. So mining should be replaced by reuse and recirculation of, for example, steel, aluminum, and plastics. Yeah, and we create a lot of waste, like I mentioned, and especially in the industrial context, this can actually, based on this pretty interesting modeling, it can contribute to 11% of global emissions. Sorry, of EU emissions. So these are pretty big numbers, and maybe third, like the car example, our buildings, that we don't need to build all these new cars and buildings if we have better capacity use of the existing fleets or buildings or office spaces and so on, and have modularity and these type of things considered. And it may be going more like kind of to the community or a practical level. There's really interesting systems like permaculture that we know of, that really these are ancient knowledge of how to put wastewater gardens in place that mimic natural systems and minimize waste and use resources efficiently. But yes, our food system is not at all related to these type of possibilities. Well, this is a more of a light throw in here, but this was an interesting point that we had on a discussion in Brazil on a little panel, that it really got my brain thinking, like if this could happen somehow, that we can't make profit out of growing or selling food, it was change things quite radically, and the outcome of this discussion, I just wanted me to put that out there. Actually, maybe it gets too philosophical to go into the how this could work and what this could mean. Quite complex, but just to kind of put this thought out there. And then what can one do? Of course, there's a lot of things that one can do. I found this lifestyle test quite interesting. It's developed by Sitra, but it's now widely in the EU, already done 1.2 million times in Finland. And you're basically just assessing your through a 5-minute survey or maybe 10 minutes, your personal carbon footprint through these 4 key areas. But it really offers nice kind of useful tips on how you can cut down your carbon footprint. And it has some interesting spin-offs too. So this is something that I thought I found useful personally and quite interesting. And maybe I'm being too generic here, but I claim that, for example, in Europe, we could very easily cut 20% of our personal carbon emissions with just a bit more awareness and a different mindset, with no effects on the quality of our life. Turning the lights off when you're away, or washing dishes, not washing dishes under running water, are not like great examples in terms of impact, but they reflect the issue. It's completely unnecessary and waste of resources, and it's more a mindset or a habit topic. Or another perspective for the same issue is this comic. So consumer buying things and new things is a bit more of an impactful example. And did you know, I don't mean to pinpoint, Jessica, your country fellowman here, but there's a study that American households own 200,000 items on average per household, and even the research-wise Germans, it goes up to 30,000 and 50,000. And this is just, one can think how many things do we really need in our households, for example. Checking that I stay with time, approaching 10 minutes. Maybe I skip. We have some interesting projects in Indonesia, turning waste into value. But I'm happy to dive into these later as well. And sometimes I think, is it really that complex, these topics that we like? It could also be quite simple if we had this kind of global governance, and we could enforce these type of systems of having like 1 cent added to every beverage sold, for example, it could be quite interesting. And there's actually talks about this kind of global EPR systems that maybe take a decade to just come into force, but that are being planned. Yeah, then lastly, so I've been really intrigued in the past year and a bit more, like I said, learning about indigenous communities and their practices. And maybe as a background context, there's this interesting philosopher, systems thinker, Peter Senge, and he's studied resilience in communities. And he points out that thus far in the human history, the only ones that have been able to live in harmony with nature have been local indigenous communities. We have not reached this on a larger scale, but we have reached this on a local scale. And yeah, this is something I think is maybe overlooked a lot due to many reasons. There's a couple. I think there's a lot of wisdom there with the guardians of the nature, and I spent some time this year in Amazonia with the Munduruku tribe and the Guarani. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things, and I was kind of learning also that this kind of harmony with nature there is with them it's very inherent. It's something that they're born with. It's something that relates to their spirituality, their higher purpose. It's something that it's there by default, and kind of posing the question: is there something that could we reach that kind of higher consciousness as humanity someday in the next decade? Something that could really shift our behavior, something that it goes beyond laws and regulations and standards. This is quite interesting. And then another quick point: this amazing young woman, indigenous woman, was asking me, "What do you think? Like, why won't the world leaders convene in a different way? Why?" So she was proposing that we could have the world leaders of all nations sit down in meditation, in silence, on certain topics at the same time in their own country and contemplate on topics. And this is how they have been working with different villages, for example. And it's just sitting and contemplating and connecting to these things. And this is like, I haven't heard about people think like this. So I think it was very, very interesting in terms of also maybe the last picture of Jessica's presentation of how governance could work in the future. But yeah, there's a bit of random food for thought here and there. But I really think that we have to be honest with the first thing. It's really the world of growth, the exploitation of resources, something that is the root cause in this way. And secondly, yeah, I look at circular economy as a means to an end, as a way to kind of get to these goals that we have and involve communities and there's some interesting aspects there. And thirdly, like I said, I think this is maybe very, very much underestimated what we can learn from the indigenous communities and their kind of participatory behaviors and this ancient wisdom, basically. They have cracked it in some way, so maybe there's something that we could look at. But I'll stop here. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and happy to continue the discussion.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing on the complex topic of circularity and also how indigenous knowledge can be important for a conversation like this. If you'd like to stay longer, we would have our Q&A session now, which will take maybe 5 minutes. We have 2 questions from the chat. Jessica, I don't know if you would want to answer directly to Paco's question, and then we can take Stephanie's question.
Yeah, absolutely. I answered in the chat as well. And I don't want to, yeah, I know I took up a lot of time with my presentation, so I want to make sure others get to chat. But yes, I think local authorities will start to want to be part of a project if a community-led initiative works with other community-led initiatives within their bioregion and start to demonstrate that the local authorities should really get involved. And also, now that we live in the world of social media, just showing your traction online, sharing those stories of community successes, I think is very inspiring to other people in a completely different location that might want to replicate that solution too.
Thanks, Jessica. Stephanie, please go ahead.
Hello. Okay, I don't know how to start or where to start. Okay. I'm from Lebanon. I'm now in the Netherlands. Last week I was giving a workshop about biomaterial and how to work with mycelium, trying to spread awareness, how to connect to the circular economy, and so on. Then you find yourself like in front of like massive climate massacres, like, and you start to question yourself, like, what, like the effect of what we are doing, like in front of the massive pollution of bombing, of bombs, of the use of phosphor, of so just like looking at this, like I kind of feel useless, like my effort or our effort, like I'm just sharing where I am, like just shedding the light on other part of the world, but this part is also connected, like if this massive pollution happening somewhere, it's not a different Earth, it's still in the same planet, we're still in the same planet. So I don't know, I just would like to listen from your side of what can I do, what can we do in front of this, or what is in our control in this point, in this situation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your real thoughts with us. And Daniel, I thought you were unmuted. Would you want to say anything?
Stephanie, thank you very much. I acknowledge and heard what you said. I don't think I can even try to give a good answer, but certainly say that you are heard, and hopefully maybe somebody else can have some ideas and thoughts on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. Jessica, Miko, open to you as well. Would you want to share anything with Stephanie concerning what she raised?
Nico, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. And I guess I can only add to what Daniel said. It's I think it's tough at times, obviously, very, very tough. But then again, what you established as well, that the things are connected, right? And then we now were shedding light to perhaps during our presentation to certain corners of the world, but really remembering in the good and in the bad that whatever we do here has some implications somewhere else. And then I think this whole interconnectedness and in a way this systemic relations between whatever we do are really, really important. I know it does not really help, I guess, at the moment with your thoughts, but I think the big picture helps as well to shed perspective, hopefully as well on the positive things.
Yeah. Thanks, Nico. Jessica, I'd want you to take this final question from Alisa. She says that, can I ask some tips or steps about the public collaboration? Which one is better? Ask an institution first or citizen first? and sorry,
Tips
I'm
about that.
missing a word. Yeah, and then I'm missing a word. Think public institutions was a bit hard to ask to collaborate. So might you give some tips? I guess it's she's asking about what's the better collaboration approach, whether asking institutions or going to the citizens first.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Elisa, for this question. Yeah, I think it really depends on your local context. So depending on how your local authorities work with citizens, if there's freedom and autonomy to demand things. So I think that that's up to you in that context. But I think I like to encourage people to always start off with talking to your neighbors, talking to your coworkers, talking to your family about certain topics, and then seeing with them, are there things that you want to change in your community that hasn't been addressed? And what would be that, whether it's, okay, we know that the water quality isn't good still, and the local water agency hasn't been improving the quality of the water for 10 years. So working with your neighbors to write a petition and to draft that and then start collecting data. Even you could get samples of the water from different homes and then find a neighbor who maybe has, the skills to analyze that sample and then collect that evidence and show that there's a case for why you're demanding that change. So I think it goes back to that, citizen science. I think we feel like we need to be experts before we can start doing something, but often we already have all the tools there and the information. It's just about working with each other. So I would start first with people that you trust in your community, in your environment. And then after that, maybe you could map who are the actors, who are the government agencies that are in charge of, the water quality, for example, if we're continuing with this case. Okay, who's in charge? Who are the, who's the CEO? Okay, who are the operational managers? And then really humanizing the issue, getting to know those people. Do they have days where the office is open? Can you go and talk to the person that's in charge of your district for, water quality assessment? So I always think, like, let's humanize these climate issues because they are inherently human and we're part of nature. And I always get fired up about this. So I'm happy, Elisa, if you want to chat, and Paco as well, or anyone else, always happy to talk about citizen campaigns and citizen activation.
Thank you, Jessica. Definitely citizen first, says Paco. Thank you everyone for joining today's session and for participating and actively sharing your questions. We would continue in some in-person PENCE events happening in Barcelona. More details are on the website. So feel free to check it out and participate if you can. Special thanks to our speakers, Jessica, Miko, and Daniel, for making time today and for sharing such amazing insights with us. And thank you everyone else for your support, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.